The unsurpassed, unbounded, wondrous are His journey after 100,000 million countless. Now I can see and hear it, except the meaning in it. May I unfold the meaning of that is true.
Good morning. We're trying a new system. Maybe easier for the phone. I don't know. For some reason, I don't know why, I remembered my first teacher, maybe 1970 or something, came into the Zendo and said, water itself cannot be polluted. Only we mix things up. And left. Well, that was 1970 was one of those years where, everybody was concerned about the environment, maybe even more than now. The Environmental Protection Agency was founded. And I think, if I remember, there was a promise that by 1980 we would have pollution-free cars, something like that. Anyhow, he wasn't talking about water. He was talking about practice. That our practice, what we call practice, cannot be broken or defiled or polluted in some way. It's just our choices that we make that we either have a healthy practice or not. That it's our choice what kind of mind we want to have, what kind of practice we want to unfold. We have these choices because practice itself does not have a requirement. It doesn't say, this is its definition here today in this room. We're going to take this definition and move it outside. That's a kind of understanding of kind of practice, like you're practicing a violin or some kind of art form where it is what it is. But our practice doesn't have that characteristic. Like water, it takes on the container that houses it. It could be salty or sweet or very, very narrow, very wide. A narrow stream, even the size of a needle, doesn't affect the character of water. It could be as wide as an ocean, but it doesn't affect the character of the water. Water itself cannot be defined by its container. It's always water. So there's these two aspects of our practice, how we choose to go forward or how we choose to live, which is the reflection of practice, and practice itself, which says it's up to you. It's your Buddha nature, express it how you will. So the first part of it, the part that we are kind of concerned about, is what to do, how to go forward, given that practice doesn't have a shape or form. Its essential nature is unchanged. Buddha gave many instructions. The water itself cannot be polluted side is Dogen Zenji's teaching. Dogen Zenji did not focus so much on do this, do that. But the nature of practice that regardless of what you do, is always present. Okay. So I'll read from the, it's a lot like going into town in the village and you come to a crosswalk and there's lines painted on the road. And so you walk. The road itself is not broken up by lines you paint. It's a continuous road. It's not affected by what lines we paint on it. There's no such thing as a separate crosswalk from the road itself. But we could almost see it that way when we're in it, like a different road. Where's the difference? Just we're painting on the reality. If we paint confusion, that's what we're going to get. A confused crosswalk. Somebody paints the line over here, then someone else paints it over there, and we don't know what to do each day. So we agree. This is a holistic practice. This is for the well-being of us all. Let's decide where this crosswalk goes. So the Buddha said, and this is this is 15 of the Dhammapada, called Happiness. Truly, we dwell in happiness. Others hate, but we do not. Surrounded by those who hate, we live free from hatred. Truly, we dwell in happiness. Others are sick, but we are not. Surrounded by sick people, we live free from sickness. Truly, we dwell in happiness, free from struggles. While others struggle, surrounded by struggling people, we live free from conflict. Truly, we dwell in happiness. Having no obstacles, we shall feed on joy. Victory produces hostility, for the defeated ones live in grief. Releasing both victory and defeat, the tranquil mind dwells in happiness. Health is the highest prize. Contentment is the greatest wealth. A loyal friend is the best relative. Nirvana is the supreme bliss. And so you could read more about this. So if we set up our practice against the world, Buddha isn't saying, avoid this or avoid that. He's saying, if you live completely involved with life, where's the sickness? If we stick on one column, we will be either victorious or defeated, and neither one is very satisfactory. So, the other side, Dogen Zenji's side, is called Gyoji Dokan. And it's translated usually as circle of the way. Gyo means Buddhist practice, Ji means to preserve and maintain. And the Dokan is kind of like a circle, something unbroken, maybe not even as defined as a circle. It's that road that is not affected by the lines painted on it. We connect with that, with our zazen mind. So even though someone says, oh, I moved the crosswalk over here today, we're not confused. The road itself, we practice with. Oh, okay, I'll walk here today. But our mind is connected to the road that continues unbroken. So we have that kind of built-in harmony and balance. We're also free to say, why did you put the crosswalk over here? What were you thinking? Never separated from the road itself, we're not disturbed by that opinion. It's only when we recognize the painted surface alone as something separate that we run into problems. And most people, unfortunately, live on that surface. they never experience the unbroken, continuous practice world. And so they have hostility in the face of defeat, or puffed up happiness in the face of victory, as if somehow that is a real separation. So there'll never be peace like that. In order for someone to be happy in that way, someone has to be sad. If all we thought about as health was versus sickness, there'd always have to be sickness. True health is not dependent on that. So, if we were practitioners, handling the pandemic, we would understand where we needed to paint that crosswalk and why. We would understand that that's our choice, how to paint that crosswalk. We would never feel separate from our health just because we're dealing with some issue about where the best way to cross is. If only that, then you'll have arguments. No, it should be here. Because it's a disconnected reality. So Dogen says, on the great road of Buddha ancestors, there is only unsurpassable practice, continuous and sustained. It forms the circle of the way and is never cut off. Between aspiration, practice, enlightenment, and nirvana, there is not a moment's gap. Continuous practice is the circle of the way. This being so, continuous practice is unstained, not forced by you or others. The power of this continuous practice confirms you as well as others. If we only confirm ourselves, then what happens to everybody else? Where's the good in that? The power of your practice affects the entire earth and the entire sky in the 10 directions, although not noticed by others or by yourself, it is so. With that mind, we can paint any crosswalk anywhere that's needed. We can paint practice, we can paint politics, we can paint religion, we can do all kinds of things. But at no time are we ever separated from the reality that water itself is not wide or short or deep or tall or polluted or salty or sweet or anything else. Water itself is always water. The difficulty people face is because they took the painting of the crosswalk as somehow a separate reality to be protected, or something, like some kind of jewel. The real jewel is the road unbroken, undefiled, cannot possibly break it. That's why the precepts for us are not commandments. The precepts for us are just, where do we put the crosswalk? How best to cross? Not just for ourselves alone. So we can define the precepts by the conditions that we have and by our own life, and not some book. If it were just a matter of commandments, it would be a rather dead, narrow practice, only good for certain people. There'd always be a victorious practitioner and someone who wasn't. Nobody is victorious in this practice, and nobody can possibly fail. It doesn't exist like that. And so, the ocean, some hurricane blows over the ocean. The ocean itself isn't disturbed. We are, because we painted this very precise way of living, neglecting the continuous practice. So that's why we put so much emphasis on the Bodhisattva way. Oh, thank you for painting the crosswalk. People will struggle as long as they set up these differences not as convenient, important conditions for the health and well-being of others, but only for their own purpose. Then they'll never connect with this continuous practice. So a stop sign on the road becomes something that, affects their freedom or something. Just a painted line. So we have these two sides. The Heart Sutra tells us this is continuous practice. It's not dependent on eye, ear, nose, tongue, body. It's that's for that reality. We don't concern ourselves with that. We do when we need to make a decision about how we live together. Then we look to the Dhammapada or to the middle discourses. Buddha did not teach the doctrine of emptiness to a wide group of people. He taught where to put the crosswalk. We have a sophisticated understanding of teaching. We read the Heart Sutra. If we don't know what we're reading, we may think we're denying the importance of that crosswalk. Instead, we understand it's exactly the same as the Heart Sutra. It's the circle of the way. It's an expression just like any other practice. So how we negotiate this life depends entirely on this continuous practice mind. We're very grateful for Buddha's help. But it's the provisional practice. It's our going forward toolbox. Buddha didn't talk about nirvana, and neither does Dogen in this writing. It would be like trying to hand grasping itself, so that's never spoken. But what it really is speaking about, nirvana, is the world of non-dualism, the reality of that continuous practice. That's nirvana. Samsara is, that up and down, back and forth, good and bad. When we no longer separate the two, that's continuous practice mind. The mind of the Bodhisattva, the mind of Mahayana Buddhism, and definitely in Soto Zen. You can read more about this Gyoji Dokkan if you go to a kind of a writing about it. It's in the Shobogenzo, by the way. Enlightenment Unfolds, Kaz Tanahashi's editing of it. It's in a library, you can get it. But if you go on the sotozen.net site and you click on library, Buddhist terms, you'll get to Gyoji Dokkan. And there's a good writing by a professor, Komazawa University, Buddhist University. He explains some of the definitions of it. But essentially, he's pointing out that it's, continuous practice is not taking something here and putting it there. It's not like leaving home and practicing asceticism or doing this and then you're a Buddhist. Continuous practice is the reality of all of that expressing Buddha nature itself. It's not about doing some specific column of activity. The reality constantly flows whether we practice or not, whether we understand it or not. When we can see that road of life, that water itself cannot be polluted reality, then provisional practice is not so difficult. It's never apart from this very place. Dogen says, why go around here and there to practice something? Meaning, where we position ourselves on that street is not as important as understanding continuous road. Except that our decisions affect everything. Your practice affects the entire earth. But we don't have to be aware of it. We don't have to walk around knowing that. My practice affects the entire earth. It affects the entire earth because the entire earth is practiced, all of the air is practiced, all situations are practiced. We have to see underneath the crosswalk, not get caught by that as a separate reality. And just one. Thank you for this space. So we're not shocked when things change. We just now adjust. Where's my preset flashlight in this dark room? I need some light here. These two realities are one reality. But now we have many people who feel defeated. Others feel victorious. It's like one side of the face sad and one side of the face happy. It's not a separate reality. So maybe our practice can enter this community with this kind of mind before we set our own thinking in stone. My teacher's wife, Yoshie, she every time somebody would come to her with some kind of opinion or something that they needed and they were really intense about, she would just always say the same thing. Interesting. That was all she'd say. But very interesting. And then she would give him some tea or something. Here, have some tea. I had this big epiphany or something. Interesting. Shorthand for, whatever, get over yourself or whatever it was that she was trying to say. It's very effective, actually. Because it is interesting, but okay. The flip side, what is that? Supposedly a Chinese curse, supposedly. May you live in interesting times. Is that really true? So we live in interesting times. So-and-so is one something. Oh, yeah, interesting. Have some tea. Come in and sit. I wonder how our neighbors are doing. They're not happy right now, I don't think. I should go bring them some pie or something. Cup of tea, I don't know what to do with them. But anyhow, don't separate your practice by making it an idea or a line you draw in life. Gyoji Dokan, circle of the way. The Heart Sutra, the essential nature that cannot be defiled no matter what we do. And Buddha's teaching that, everything matters. Here's some advice. There is nothing that doesn't matter. That's why our practice affects everything, earth, sky, relationships. So we're careful. Don't meet people as opposing your practice. Meet them as an example of practice. And Genjo Khan Dogen will say, you can go out and look for awakening if you want. You can try to find it among certain things, but it's very exhausting. Better let things come to you as an example of Gyoji Dokan. Buddhist practice continuing. Buddhist teaching continues. Therefore, no shape, no size, no form, no eye, no ear. Much freer. Much more ability to stand in your own world and in somebody else's. Why limit yourself? But it's very important to understand these differences have real effects on people. And that's affecting us. The more harmonious we can be, the more Gyoji Dokan mind we can bring, the less these divisions become a problem. Who moved the crosswalk? Where did it go? Won't matter to us so much. If you get a chance to read Dogen Zenji's continuous practice, it's a rather large fascicle. The first part is the most important, where he talks about the nature of it. The next part, he gives examples of lineage practice, of how these different teachers approached continuous practice in individual lives. Also helpful. So, Zazen mind is Gyoji Dokan. How we apply, where we paint that crosswalk on it, how we live our lives, equally important. So, put this practice in front of you and let it unfold. Don't put it in front of you and try to keep it there, freeze framing it like some definition. Let it unfold. And maybe we keep my teacher's wise advice. Just, somebody approaches you with something like interesting. May I help you in some way? So we're careful here. Don't create too many divisions, too many litmus tests get in here, None is best. As always, this Gyoji Dokan mind, Zazen mind, very true. What affects heaven and earth and how we interact with each other is why we take care of ourselves for the sake of others. And that's our benefit. So we want to know, what can we do? Too many people, there'll always be sickness and health, even no matter what. But real health embraces sickness. You don't embrace sickness, then you'll always pit against health. We don't embrace society and all its differences, the differences will prevail. Easy for me to say, I'm not trying to solve the problems. But nevertheless, it's true. So, take care of this Gyoji mind, Dokan Gyoji mind, this unbroken practice in whatever situation we're in, and to use our teaching, Buddhist teaching, to help us negotiate the surface, the road, the surface of that road, where we need to put elements to help us. Both are equally important.
May this marriage and university to all, so that we together with all beings realize that we are aware. These are numbers. I vow to read them. Religions are inexhaustible. I vow to read them. The gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. This way is unsurpassable. I vow to realize this.